suspects are being. One case involves the FBI is now offering $100,000 to see for the police are releasing.
Welcome to Misty Mysteries, a paranormal and true crime podcast. This week I'm going to be taking you to Old Town San Diego to tell you about a man named Yankee Jim and a historical home he's believed to haunt. This is one topic that I am very excited to tell you about because not only did I grow up hearing these stories and learning about the home, but I've had the opportunity to visit Old Town San Diego and experience the Whaley home for myself, where I can say I had my own experience to share. Before jumping into the story, I'd like to play a clip for you from my friends over at the Force 5 podcast.
What's up, listeners? Force 5 is a show about movie-related top 5 lists, hosted by me, Blacklist screenwriter and ex-video store cinephile Jason Kleberg. I have a new guest on each week, and the guest gets to pick the topic. Past guests have included film directors, screenwriters, actors, critics, comedians, rappers, artists, and other podcasters. Love or hate our picks, you're guaranteed to walk away thinking, what would be on my list? Search Force 5 wherever you get your pods, or head to force5podcast.com.
Welcome back from the break. I can't wait to hear more, and I hope that you guys check them out too. James Robinson was a French-Canadian man who made his way to California sometime in the 1840s. Many historians have debated why James came to California, but it's believed to be between two reasons. The first one being that he came to the mines at the time of the gold rush, and the second, he came to California to start his life after finishing his time in the Navy. The records I could find about James come from a newspaper article from October 7th, 1873. This article first reads, in August 1852, there were 3 disagreeable men in San Diego named James Robinson, alias Yankee Jim, James Grayson Lauren, and William Harris. They hailed from the early mining camps, and soon after their arrival came information of a reliable character which pointed out Yankee Jim as a dangerous character. While some of the people in San Diego thought of James, or better known as Yankee Jim Robinson, as a dangerous man, others would say he was a good guy. For Yankee Jim, the people who knew him as a dangerous man had more of a say in his life than those who thought kindly of him. In August of 1852, he was arrested with his friends, or better known as his henchmen, James Grayson Lauren and William Harris. The men were arrested for stealing a boat out of the San Diego harbor belonging to Joseph C. Stewart and Enos Wall. They were charged with grand larceny and stood trial that same month of August. On August 18, 1852, the men were found guilty by the jury. James Loring and William Harris were sentenced to a year in the California State Prison, while Yankee Jim Robinson was sentenced to be hanged till death. The men and the jury wanted him to be hanged the same night as the verdict, but the judge on trial sent him to the county jail where the sheriff would watch over him, and he would stay for a month till his execution on September 18, 1852. On September 18th, Yankee Jim was taken to a small adobe jail room that was closely guarded and was then put in a wagon pulled by mules, while 2 Catholic priests accompanied him to talk to him about the realities of death and what he believed would happen after death. When he reached the gallows, which sat in an empty field of trees, the 2 priests left the wagon to join the crowd there to watch Yankee Jim's execution. The noose was put on Yankee Jim's neck while he gave his last speech to the crowd, where he told them he was a good man and would give piles of gold to poor men he met. When 3 p.m. hit, the executioner ordered the wagon to move from Yankee Jim's feet. His death would be described as horrific and gruesome. He was 6'4", and the gallows were made for shorter men at this time. Because of this, his execution took longer than the men who had previously been executed on these gallows. After his death, James Robinson, or Yankee Jim, would be taken to the El Campo Santo cemetery, only 2 blocks away from the gallows. Even after death, his height was a disadvantage. At the time, not only were the gallows made for shorter men, but so were the coffins. And instead of the county getting a bigger coffin for Yankee Jim, the men in charge of his burial chose to break his legs to bury him. Yankee Jim was given a wooden grave marker with the markings James W. Robinson and Yankee Jim right under his name. His grave can still be visited to this day, even though the cemetery has changed. In 1889, a streetcar line was built through the cemetery. It was then paved in 1942, making the streetcar line part of San Diego Avenue. For 18 people, the project left their resting spots under the sidewalks and streets of Old Town San Diego. Like many cemeteries with disrupted graves, reports of hauntings come from all over. People who park in front of the cemetery have trouble getting their cars started, and their alarms will go off without anyone touching the cars. In the cemetery, visitors feel icy chills even on summer days. Figures are seen in Victorian dresses, but disappear in front of people's eyes. Glowing figures are seen floating over the sidewalk, and a woman in a white Victorian dress is seen walking along the cemetery. The Campo Santo Cemetery is not the only haunted place in Old Town San Diego, with a history of Yankee Jim. Going back to the day of Yankee Jim's execution, in the crowd was a man named Thomas Whaley. But first, before I tell you about Thomas Whaley, let's go to a break and hear about Anchor. Have you heard of Anchor? Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. When I started Misty Mysteries, I didn't know where to go, and Anchor helped me get Misty Mysteries started without charging me an arm and a leg. Anchor is really my suggestion for anyone looking to start a podcast. It has tools that allow you to record and edit in-app or on the website. Anchor distributes your podcast on all the listening places such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Good Pods, and all your favorite listening places. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place, and best of all, it's totally free, all on Anchor FM and on the Anchor app. Welcome back. Let's talk about Thomas Whaley. Thomas Whaley was born in Manhattan on October 5th, 1823. Thomas came over to California for one of the same reasons Yankee Jim and many others did, the California Gold Rush. He settled in San Francisco, where he opened up his own general store till it burnt down by arson in 1851. Instead of rebuilding in San Francisco, he and his business partner, Louis Franklin, moved to San Diego to open a new general store where he learned Spanish to sell to the natives of San Diego. A year later, Louis sold his half of the business to Thomas, and Thomas used the money he made from the sale to go back to New York and marry his love, Anna Eloise Delaney. Thomas and Anna married on August 14, 1853, in New York, and began their journey back to San Diego. Shortly after they made it to San Diego, Anna and Thomas welcomed their first son into the world on December 28, 1854, a son named Francis Hinton Whaley. In 1856, with a pregnant wife and almost 2-year-old son, Thomas Whaley bought a land to build the house on. The land Thomas bought was the same land the county used for the gallows, and where Thomas witnessed the execution of Yankee Jim just 4 years before. Thomas Whaley began construction on the Whaley house on May 6, 1856, when he declared, "My new house, when completed, will be the handsomest, most comfortable, and convenient place in town within 150 miles of here." Thomas designed the house himself. It was a 2-story brick home featuring San Diego's first professional theater, a general store, and San Diego's second county courthouse. On the first floor of the home is a general store, courthouse, a living room with a bedroom just off of it, and a dining room. On the second floor are 3 bedrooms and the theater. Outside, behind the home, you'll find the bathroom, kitchen, and a garden Anna Whaley loved to garden in. For the time the Whaley's house was built, indoor plumbing wasn't available, which is why the bathroom and the kitchen would be outside. Thomas and Anna finished their home with mahogany and rosewood furniture, Brussels carpets, and the house in total costed the Whaleys $10,000 to build and decorate. The Whaley's house was considered the first of its kind to the area and a mansion for the time. In 1857, Thomas Whaley, Anna Whaley, Francis Whaley, and baby Thomas Whaley Jr., born on August 18, 1856, during construction, moved into the newly built and famously known Whaley home. A few months after living in the home, Thomas opened the general store for business, but the Whaley's life took a turn in the home on January 29, 1858, when Thomas Whaley Jr. passed away at 18 months old from scarlet fever. And just 6 months later, Anna and Thomas welcomed their first daughter, Anna Amelia Whaley, on June 27, 1858. And just 7 months after Thomas Jr.'s death, and a month after Anna Amelia was born, a fire broke out in the general store of the Whaley's home. This is when Thomas and Anna made the decision to move to San Francisco. While living in San Francisco, Anna and Thomas had 3 more children. George Hay Ringgold Whaley, born November 5, 1860. Violet Eloise Whaley, born October 14, 1862. And Corinne Lillian Whaley, born September 4, 1864. In May of 1868, after a huge earthquake hit San Francisco, the Whaley family, now with 5 kids, moved back to their home in San Diego. In December of 1868, months after the family moved back home, an acting group named the Tanner Troupe, ran by a man named Thomas W. Tanner, rented out the theater on the 2nd floor of the home for weekly entertainment involving dramas, singing, comedy, and dancing. Just 17 days after renting out the theater on December 22nd, while entertaining a crowd, the curtain came down too early onto Thomas Tanner, killing him at age 55. Thomas Tanner was buried in the cemetery near the Whaley home. His grave can also be still visited, and if you are in Old Town and were visiting the grave of Yankee Jim, you can also visit him. After Thomas Tanner's untimely death in the Whaley home, the family seemed to see good days. In January 1882, Anna Amelia, the first daughter, and Violet Whaley even had a double wedding. Violet Whaley's marriage wasn't all it was supposed to be. Her husband George left Violet after he had realized that Thomas Whaley did not have the money that George thought he did, and that he would not be getting money from his marriage with Violet. Some stories report that he left Violet on their honeymoon, and some 2 weeks later. House historian Dean Glass has said, though George may not have been a nice guy, he did not leave Violet on their honeymoon. George and Violet's divorce went through in 1883. Violet found herself suffering from depression after George left. Corinne, her younger sister, said she took no interest in anything. She was under Dr. Grade's treatment, was anxious to have health but tired of life. On August 18, 1885, Violet Whaley went into the bathroom outside of the home with a pistol she had taken from her father Thomas days before. And at 6:30 a.m., Violet shot herself. Thomas, just moments before she shot herself, was calling for her, asking if she wanted a peach. When he heard the gunshot, he ran to Violet, picking her up and carrying her inside the home. Thomas said Violet never spoke a word after he carried her inside. She just groaned before she passed away from her injuries 10 to 15 minutes later. Thomas found Violet's suicide note on the back porch, containing a passage from a poem by Thomas Hood named Bridges of Sigh. Her note read, "Mad from life's history, swift to death's mystery, glad to be hurtled anywhere out of this world." After her death, the famous Whaley house was too hard for Thomas to live in. He built a new house for his family on 933 State Street in San Diego, where they moved and lived till Thomas Whaley's death on December 14, 1890, at 67 years old after years of failing health. In December of 1905, Anna Amelia Whaley, Anna and Thomas's first daughter, passed away in California at age 47. In 1909, Francis Whaley started to restore the original Whaley home that his father had left after his sister's death. In 1912, he turned it into a tourist attraction where he would play guitar and sing to the people visiting the home. Francis and Anna both lived in the home during this time. Anna Whaley died in the home on February 24, 1913, at age 75. And Francis Whaley, their firstborn, passed away just a year after his mother on November 19, 1914, at age 59. His death was the last death in the Whaley home. George Whaley died on January 5, 1928, at age 67, at an unknown location. Corinne Whaley was the last Whaley to live in the home before she moved to Lemon Grove Rest Home, where she passed away on September 14, 1953, at age 89 years old. The Whaley family was the only family to ever live or own the Whaley home before it opened as a museum and haunted attraction on May 26, 1960. The first people to ever experience a haunting in this home were actually Thomas Whaley and Anna Whaley themselves. Thomas would report hearing heavy footsteps walking around the home. He would describe them as footsteps of a tall man. Corinne Whaley told a paper at one point that she was convinced the ghost of Yankee Jim haunted the home. Along with unexplained footsteps, visitors and workers of the home report figures standing in the window from the street when the home is empty, unexplained noises, and smells. The Whaley home has been named America's most haunted house, and Yankee Jim isn't the only spirit in the home. Baby Thomas Whaley can be heard crying and giggling in the halls and rooms of the home. If you listen close enough, you can even hear his little footsteps running around the home. A spirit, believed to be a little girl by the name of Annabelle Washburn, is seen standing and playing in the dining room. The story of Annabelle Washburn is that she was a little girl who was friends with the Whaley children. She ran into a low-hanging clothesline that broke her neck. Thomas Whaley brought her into the home, laying her on the dining room table where she passed away in the home. There has never been any record of an Annabelle or any little girls by the last name Washburn in the Whaley house history. Could this little girl be Violet showing herself at a younger age than what she passed away at? Many visitors, employees, and even people before the home was a museum reported seeing Violet in the home and outside the home near the bathroom where she completed suicide. Her cry can be heard throughout the home and the property. Police have even been called to check when people hear her cries late at night. Some visitors even credit her for cold chills in the home. Mr. Thomas Whaley is seen in his favorite coat and top hat at the top of the stairs. The smell of his cigar smoke can be smelt near his bedroom and throughout the home. Anna Whaley had a favorite French perfume that can be smelt in the same area as Thomas Whaley's smoke. Anna can be seen throughout the house, especially outside in her garden. Children who visit the home often see a small terrier dog running around. The Whaleys did own a small terrier dog who passed away in the home. As I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, I've had the chance to explore the home and experience it for myself. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience. In December of 2017, me, my brother, and a person I was dating at the time decided to take a trip to the Whaley house. We went on a rare, stormy day in California. It was raining hard with strong winds and was a very dark day. When we bought our tickets, the woman told us today is the perfect day to visit because of the energy of the storm and that the family is most active during the day. We were the only people visiting the house at the time, which allowed us to spend a lot of time exploring and looking at everything. Going into the home felt like walking into a grandparent's home or a close friend's house. None of us saw or felt much till we got to the second story of the home. In the theater, it was very cold, especially in certain spots, but that could have been because of the storm. When we started to look into the bedrooms upstairs, we had an experience that sticks with me to this day. I was standing near the stairs while my brother sat on chairs that were located at the end of the hall, and my ex looked into Violet Whaley's room. I started to feel like I couldn't breathe or someone had their hands on my throat. One of the employees walked up the stairs and noticed us. She was the first person we saw in the home, and she took up conversation with us. I told her about how I was feeling on the stairs. She told me that I was feeling a residual haunting from Anna Whaley. In 1871, when Thomas was away on a business trip, an angry mob broke into Steele County Records and held her at gunpoint on the stairs. Anna had an anxiety attack while this happened, and to this day, visitors, mostly women, feel the way she felt while being held at gunpoint. The employee decided to do an EVP session with the spirit box in Violet's room. She asked Violet what she was doing, and Violet replied to us, "Death's note." She then explained to us that Violet wrote her suicide note that the desk we were looking at that was in her bedroom. Violet replied, "Gun." She then started to talk about Violet's death and her husband, and on the spirit box we heard a scream. She told us that Violet doesn't like people talking about her marriage, and that Violet doesn't like her personally very much, and apologized and ended the session. We thanked her for her time. We then decided to leave the house as me and my brother felt sick. By the time we got to the car, we felt better. Thank you for listening to Misty Mysteries. If you like the podcast, I would love if you headed over where you listen to not only leave a 5-star review for Misty Mysteries, but subscribe to listen each week. If you want to own your own Misty Mystery merch, I'm so happy to say the podcast now has a merch store. And if you don't want to commit to a shirt or a sweater just yet, the store also has mugs and masks. You can find Misty Mysteries on all your favorite listening places such as Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Anchor, and so many more. I hope you are having a fantastic day. Please be safe out there this holiday season, and if you haven't already, do something nice for yourself, and I will see you guys next Sunday.